On the day my husband's will was read, my daughter-in-law smirked and told the room I wouldn't get a cent. Not a house key, not a keepsake, nothing. Then she handed me a tie clip as if it was a consolation prize. She thought I'd quietly fade away. She didn't know she'd just lit the fuse. I sat frozen, my hands resting on the frayed cuff of my black dress. Across the polished mahogany table, Vanessa Carter, my late husband's daughter-in-law, stood like she owned the place. Her voice was crisp, her heels planted, and her smile had the kind of politeness that felt like a slap. As of the finalized documents, she announced, Margaret Blake will not be receiving any portion of Daniel Blake's estate. Not a blink, not a flicker of hesitation, just a flat sentence that cut through the air. Daniel had been sick for 10 months. I stayed beside him through every chemo session, every midnight panic, every slow walk down our hallway when his legs couldn't hold him. Vanessa? She was off at leadership retreats and charity galas, racking up air miles while posting family-first captions on Instagram. When the meeting ended, she walked over, handed me a small box, and said, Daniel wanted you to have this. Inside was a silver tie clip, not even one he wore often. No letter, no explanation, just a smirk that told me she thought this was closure. I nodded. I couldn't bring myself to say thank you. That night, I sat in our quiet kitchen with a mug of tea I didn't touch. His cologne still lingered in the hallway curtains. His cane still leaned by the back door. The whole house felt like Daniel, except now, I was the stranger in it. After the last car from the service left, I wandered the yard alone, stepping around folding chairs and paper cups. Vanessa had orchestrated every detail, the slideshow font, the caterer's coffee blend, even the shade of lilies. It was flawless, soulless. Daniel would have hated it. He believed funerals should be messy, loud stories, bad wine stains, rain without umbrellas. When I came inside, she was already packing documents at the dining table. Without looking up, she said, We'll move forward with estate processing next week. I've already coordinated with legal. No pause. No, are you okay? Just business. 2 days later, an email arrived, not from her, but her assistant. Subject, estate administration meeting scheduled. No greeting, no sympathy, just a date, a time, and a downtown address. Wednesday morning, I drove there in silence. The building was glass and steel, sterile as a hospital. The receptionist blinked when I gave my name, like she hadn't expected someone in an off-the-rack jacket to walk into that kind of meeting. Inside the conference room, 7 people sat in tailored suits. Vanessa at the head, eyes locked on a stack of folders. She gestured to a seat far from the table. I took it. She began reading, stock portfolios, commercial property in Maine, art collections I'd helped Daniel choose. Then, without warning, she said, Primary control of the Blake family trust was transferred to me 6 months ago. My stomach twisted. For 21 years, Daniel and I managed that trust together. He never said a word about giving her control. A lawyer finally asked, And Mrs. Blake's portion? Vanessa didn't even glance my way. There are no remaining distributions assigned to her under the current filing. No one spoke. When the meeting ended, I walked out without a word. On the drive home, my hands shook on the steering wheel. This wasn't neglect. This was deliberate. She hadn't just removed me from Daniel's future. She was erasing me from his past. And somewhere deep in my gut, a thought took root. She'd started this long before Daniel took his last breath. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Vanessa's face at the head of that conference table. Calm, smug, untouchable. At 3 a.m., I found myself in Daniel's study. The room still smelled faintly of cedar and his aftershave. I pulled open the bottom drawer of his desk, the one that always stuck. Inside were old receipts, library slips, and a half-used mechanical pencil. And then a small manila folder with no label. I opened it. The first page was in Daniel's handwriting, shaky but unmistakable. Vanessa wants me to update the will. Says it's for clarity. She's drawing up the papers herself. I haven't signed yet. Haven't told Margaret. She'd ask questions I'm not ready to answer. The second page was a photocopy of a will, not the one Vanessa read at the meeting. This one had red ink scribbled all over it. In the margins, Daniel had circled my name. Leave personal assets, including home shares and designated accounts, to my wife, Margaret Blake. It had been crossed out. Next to it, Daniel had written, Discuss with Vanessa. The third page was a schedule of legal meetings, and 2 of the dates were from weeks Daniel was in the hospital. The only times I wasn't with him were the evenings Vanessa insisted she'd cover for me. A cold wave ran through me. This wasn't just paperwork. This was groundwork. The next morning, I called the only person Daniel ever said to trust if things got ugly. Thomas Carter, no relation to Vanessa. A former financial attorney, old school, razor sharp. When I told him what I'd found, he didn't sound surprised. He just said, Meet me tomorrow. Bring the folder. We met at a corner cafe near the courthouse. Same chipped mugs from the days Daniel served on the community board. I slid the folder across the table. Thomas read in silence, his jaw tightening. Then he pointed to 2 witness signatures on the final will. Never heard of them, he said. And Daniel always used people he knew for witnesses. We agreed. No sudden moves, no accusations yet. Quiet digging first. 2 days later, Thomas called. Found one of the witnesses, Ava Kimball, a notary. She's agreed to meet. Ava was mid-30s, polite, nervous. In the law office conference room, she twisted her cardigan sleeves as she spoke. Vanessa had told her the revisions were routine cleanup. But Ava noticed the speed. No multiple review rounds, no client meetings, just quick signatures after hours. One night, she said, she stopped by to grab her coat and walked in on Vanessa with another staffer. Vanessa held out a signature page and said, I just need this witnessed. Ava signed, but never saw Daniel in the room. Then Ava mentioned something else, an overheard phone call between Vanessa and someone she didn't know. One line stuck with her, liquidate silently. No delays. That was 2 days before Daniel's final hospitalization. She signed a sworn statement that afternoon. Thomas and I left the office in silence, but inside I was burning. This wasn't paranoia anymore. This was a trail. 2 days later, an invitation arrived in a gold-embossed envelope. A tribute to Daniel Blake, hosted by Vanessa Carter. Cocktails, hors d'oeuvres, charity auction. For days away. No personal call. Just the card, as if I were a guest, not the woman who spent 37 years beside him. I called Thomas. He asked if I wanted backup. I said no. This wasn't about confrontation. Not yet. The night of the event, I wore a silk blouse Daniel had given me on our anniversary. The country club was packed with familiar faces, people who'd eaten at our table, signed Christmas cards, called Daniel a friend. Vanessa was the star of the evening, poised, glowing, greeting guests like she was the widow, not me. In the corner, a display labeled Daniel's favorite things caught my eye. Among them, the first edition novel I'd given him. The card didn't mention me. A former colleague asked how I was managing the foundation's finances. I told him I'd been removed. His smile faltered, then he walked away. That told me everything. Vanessa hadn't told everyone the truth. So I stayed just long enough to collect conversations, overheard comments, and mental notes of who seemed clueless and who looked guilty. When I left, I didn't slam a door or cause a scene. But in my car, one sentence looped in my mind like a siren. She started this before Daniel was even gone. The morning after the tribute, I spread my handwritten notes across the kitchen table. Conversations. Names. Phrases. I didn't embellish. I didn't have to. The truth was damning enough. By noon, I was in Thomas's office with Lydia Morales, a probate litigator he'd brought in. Lydia had sharp eyes, no wasted words. She read my notes slowly, pen tapping against her chin. This isn't just mismanagement, she finally said. It's premeditated. And possibly criminal. That same afternoon, she filed a formal motion to challenge the will, undue influence, potential fraud, breach of fiduciary duty. Not a lawsuit yet, but enough to demand records, emails, access logs. I went home thinking Vanessa would lash out immediately. She didn't. 3 days of silence. No letters. No threats. Just a stillness that felt more dangerous than yelling. On the 4th day, the storm broke, but not how I expected. A manila envelope arrived at my door. Inside was a flash drive and a handwritten note. I think you should see this. Don't call me. Don't mention my name. No signature. I plugged the drive into Daniel's old laptop. 2 files. The first was a spreadsheet. Assets, account numbers, transfer dates. Several entries were marked with red flags. Transactions made weeks before Daniel's death. Transfers to an LLC I'd never heard of. The second file was a short video clip. My heart pounded as I hit play. It was grainy, security camera footage, date-stamped 8 days before Daniel's hospitalization. The angle showed the hallway outside Daniel's office at the foundation. Vanessa stood near the door with 2 men in suits. One man I recognized as a junior accountant from the firm. The other? I'd never seen him. The sound was faint, but one sentence from Vanessa was clear. Get him to sign it tonight. He doesn't need to read every page. My stomach turned. I replayed it 3 times, memorizing every detail. When I showed Thomas and Lydia, their reaction was immediate. Lydia leaned forward, eyes lit. If this is authentic, it's game over. But the twist came when Thomas cross-referenced the LLC name from the spreadsheet. It wasn't just some random shell company. The listed owner was Caleb Carter, Vanessa's younger brother. Caleb, the same one who'd been mysteriously flush with cash lately, buying a lake house and posting yacht photos on social media. This isn't sloppy, Thomas said grimly. This is a family operation. That night, I couldn't sit still. The anger was too sharp. I walked the house, passing every photo of Daniel, every memory we'd built. I kept thinking about the cane by the back door, untouched since his last walk. And how, in his final weeks, Vanessa had insisted I take breaks, for my own health. Now I understood, those breaks were windows. Opportunities. 2 days later, Lydia called. "You're going to want to hear this," she said. Apparently, when our motion went through, the court sent out document preservation orders. One of those hit the accounting firm Vanessa used. And someone there, maybe nervous, maybe fed up, handed over a copy of an internal email chain. The subject line? Final push, DB sign-off. The thread revealed Vanessa's strategy. Keep me out of meetings, limit Daniel's contact with outsiders, and streamline paperwork. Caleb was CC'd on every message. One email from him read, "If she asks questions, stall." The window's closing. I stared at the printout. My hands shook, not from fear, but from the confirmation that every uneasy feeling I'd had in those last months was justified. But here's the real kicker. Buried in the chain was an attachment. A scanned page from the original will, pre-revisions. It was the same page Daniel had circled in red ink, with my name still intact. The metadata showed the scan date was after Daniel's death, meaning someone accessed the original, intact will, and then hid it. Why would they keep this? I asked. Thomas's answer was cold. Leverage. Against you, against anyone. It's how people like Vanessa operate. We now had more than suspicion. We had a pattern, a witness, documents, and, if authenticated, video proof of coercion. And yet, something told me Vanessa wasn't the type to crumble quietly. Which is why, when a certified letter arrived the next morning, my heart sank. The return address? Caleb Carter. I opened it carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper with one line typed in the middle. "Walk away, Margaret. You don't know the whole story." The letter from Caleb sat on my kitchen counter for hours. I read that single line again and again. You don't know the whole story. By midnight, I decided, if there was more to the story, I'd find it myself. The next morning, I drove to the courthouse to check public filings on Caleb's LLC. The clerk was bored, scrolling her phone, but after a few minutes, she handed me a slim packet of records. Most of it was routine, until I spotted a name I didn't recognize, Hannah Price. She was listed as administrative liaison on several asset transfer forms. Her signature appeared right next to Caleb's on a half-dozen documents, all dated while Daniel was in the hospital. I had no idea who she was, but fate, or something like it, introduced us that afternoon. I was leaving the courthouse when I heard someone call, "Mrs. Blake." I turned to see a young woman, maybe late 20s, holding a folder against her chest. She looked nervous but determined. "I'm Hannah Price," she said quickly. "I think we need to talk." We sat on a bench outside under the pale winter sun. She didn't waste time. I used to work for Caleb, office assistant. I didn't realize at first what was going on. They told me Daniel approved all the changes. That you knew. But she hesitated, biting her lip. Then I overheard Vanessa telling Caleb to make it happen before she figures it out. My pulse quickened. She meant me. "Yes," Hannah said, eyes wide. "She was talking about you." She reached into her folder and pulled out a flash drive. "These are copies of everything I could get. Emails, scanned documents, voice memos." Caleb kept recordings of some calls. Not sure why. I stared at the little piece of plastic like it was a bomb. "Why are you giving this to me?" "Because I quit. 2 weeks ago. And because my dad knew Daniel years ago. He always said he was the most honest man he'd met. I couldn't watch them do this to you." When I got home, Thomas and Lydia came over immediately. We plugged in the drive. The first folder was emails, more proof of coordination between Vanessa and Caleb. The second was scanned bank records. But it was the third folder that made Lydia sit forward, audio files. We clicked one. Vanessa's voice. "Caleb, she'll be too busy with hospital visits to notice. Just get the signatures." Caleb, "And the will?" "Vanessa, leave the personal assets section blank for now. I'll fill it in after." I felt my stomach turn. The next file was worse, a call between Caleb and someone from the accounting firm. Caleb mentioned a transfer bonus if things wrapped up before month's end. The accountant asked if Daniel had actually read the revisions. Caleb laughed. "Doesn't matter. It's handled." Thomas leaned back in his chair. "This is the nail in the coffin." But Hannah wasn't finished. She pulled a single sheet of paper from her bag, a photocopy of a handwritten note. "It was on Caleb's desk," she said, "dated 2 weeks before Daniel died." The note was short, in Daniel's handwriting. If you find this, know I tried. She's been pressing me. I didn't want to worry you. Trust your instincts." The Margaret, was underlined twice. I sat there, clutching the paper, feeling a strange mix of grief and fire. Hannah shifted uncomfortably. "There's one more thing. I think they're moving some of the assets offshore." I heard them mention a meeting in Boston with someone from a private bank. It's in 2 days. Lydia's eyes lit up. If that's true, and we catch them in the act, it's over. The plan formed quickly. Hannah still had access to the shared calendar for Caleb's LLC. She'd send us the meeting location. Lydia would coordinate with an investigator she trusted in Boston. 2 days. That's all we had. That night, I found myself pacing the house. The shadows felt different, less like the weight of grief, more like the edge of something about to break open. Daniel's cane was still by the back door. For the first time, I picked it up. It was heavy, solid. I thought about the man who carried it, the life we built, the way Vanessa had smiled like she'd already erased me. Not yet. Not ever. 2 mornings later, I boarded the first flight to Boston with Lydia and Thomas. Hannah's text the night before had been short. Meeting confirmed. 10 a.m., Tuesday. Fairmont Harborview, Suite 1704. The plan was simple. Lydia's investigator, a quiet man named Grant, would be in the suite next door, ready to record. All we needed was for Vanessa and Caleb to incriminate themselves. We arrived early. The Fairmont lobby smelled like expensive cologne and polished wood. From a corner armchair, I watched the elevators, heart pounding. At 9:56, they arrived. Vanessa in a cream coat, Caleb in a navy suit that didn't quite fit. They didn't see me. They took the elevator to the 17th floor. Grant went up a minute later. Lydia followed soon after, under the pretense of checking the conference setup. Thomas and I waited in the lounge with coffee we didn't touch. At 10:07, my phone buzzed. A text from Lydia. They're talking. Caleb's nervous. Vanessa is calm. 5 minutes later, she's discussing account numbers. Offshore. Explicit. I was gripping my cup so hard my knuckles ached when the next message came through. Change of tone. Someone else is there. Female voice. Not Hannah. I froze. Another player? Then Grant called. Margaret, you need to hear this. She's telling them she wants a larger cut. Says she has leverage they don't want public. I mouthed to Thomas. Who? He shook his head. Then Grant added. She just pulled out a phone and said she has everything recorded. Vanessa's panicking. For the first time in months, I felt the balance shift. 10 minutes later, Grant and Lydia emerged from the elevator, eyes wide. You're not going to believe this, Lydia said. The woman is Vanessa's own assistant. Apparently, she's been secretly recording them for over a year. She told them she'd go to the authorities unless they paid her off. And Lydia leaned in. She mentioned she already sent copies to you. My jaw dropped. To me, she said you'll know what to do with them. Before I could process, the elevator dinged again, and Vanessa and Caleb stormed out, faces pale. Vanessa spotted me instantly. Her smile was tight, brittle. Margaret, she said smoothly, what a surprise. Not really, I replied. I've been expecting you. Caleb muttered something about lawyers and walked off. Vanessa stayed, studying me like she was trying to see how much I knew. You could end this quietly, she said. You don't have to drag it out. Neither do you, I said. But you will. Her eyes narrowed. You think you've won? I think Daniel deserved better than what you gave him, I said softly. And I think you're about to find out what happens when people stop underestimating me. She didn't reply. She just turned on her heel and followed Caleb out of the hotel. Back upstairs, Grant handed me a small USB drive. The assistant gave me this before she left. It's everything. Calls, documents, screenshots. She said she's tired of working for the Queen of Ice. That night, back in my Boston hotel room, I went through the files. The assistant's name was Marissa. She'd been recording since the day Vanessa took control of the family trust. One audio clip made my blood run cold. Vanessa, laughing over dinner with Caleb. By the time she figures it out, she'll be too broke to fight us. Another was worse. A meeting where Caleb explained exactly how they forged Daniel's signature on one of the revisions. The next morning, Lydia filed an emergency motion to submit the recordings to the court. She also called the district attorney's office. By noon, Vanessa's attorneys were scrambling. Caleb's name started popping up in unrelated fraud cases. And yet, my gut told me it wasn't over. People like Vanessa don't fold easily. So when my phone buzzed at midnight, I knew who it would be. Marissa. Her voice was tense. Margaret, you need to be careful. They've still got something they think will ruin you if you push too far. And they're planning to use it. Marissa's warning replayed in my mind all night. They've still got something. They'll use it. By morning, I decided, no more waiting for Vanessa's next move. I was going to smoke her out. Lydia agreed. The best defense right now is daylight. If they're holding something, we'll force them to put it on the table before they can twist it. The opportunity came faster than expected. The court scheduled a preliminary hearing to review the recordings Marissa had given us. Vanessa and Caleb would have to attend in person. The morning of the hearing, the courthouse buzzed. I arrived early, wearing Daniel's old lapel pin, a small anchor-shaped one he'd picked up on our honeymoon. Vanessa walked in like she was stepping onto a red carpet. Hair flawless, heels clicking, Caleb trailing behind like a shadow. But her eyes, they darted, calculating. The judge opened by reviewing the audio. Vanessa's voice filled the courtroom. By the time she figures it out, she'll be too broke to fight us. Caleb's laugh followed, oily and smug. For the first time, I saw Vanessa's mask crack. Then her attorney stood. Your Honor, we have evidence showing Mrs. Blake engaged in questionable financial activity prior to Mr. Blake's passing. The courtroom went still. My stomach tightened. This was there something. The attorney handed the judge a folder. Lydia glanced at me, calm. They're bluffing. The judge skimmed the papers, then looked up. This is a scanned image of a personal check from Mrs. Blake to an unmarked account. Date? He flipped the page. 3 years before Mr. Blake's illness. Lydia rose. Your Honor, that account belongs to the Blake Community Garden Project, a registered nonprofit. These are the founding documents. She handed over a certified binder. Mrs. Blake used her personal funds to keep it running during a drought year. It's all documented with the IRS. The judge's eyes narrowed at Vanessa's attorney. Do you have anything else? Silence. The moment broke. Vanessa shifted in her seat, rage flickering across her face. Then, out of nowhere, Caleb spoke. Loudly. It was her idea. The will changes, the transfers. I told her it was risky. Gasps rippled through the room. Vanessa whipped around to glare at him, but it was too late. The judge raised a hand. Enough. This matter is now under review for criminal investigation. It was chaos after that. Lawyers whispering furiously, reporters outside trying to push through the doors. Lydia guided me through the crowd while Caleb and Vanessa argued in the hallway, their voices sharp and venomous. By the time I stepped onto the courthouse steps, the winter sun was bright, blinding. Cameras flashed. Microphones appeared. One reporter shouted, Mrs. Blake, any comment on today's revelations? I stopped, adjusted the lapel pin, and said, I told you I wouldn't disappear. 2 days later, the foundation released a statement. Vanessa Carter and Caleb Carter had resigned from all positions, pending a criminal probe. A temporary board, made up of Daniel's oldest friends and colleagues, reinstated my role as trustee. That evening, I sat in Daniel's study, the manila folder beside me. I opened it one last time, reading his note. Trust your instincts. I'd done that. And it had brought me here, not to revenge, but to something better, survival, truth, and the quiet satisfaction of watching those who underestimated me crumble under their own weight. Still, I couldn't help but wonder about Marissa's parting words. Was there more Vanessa hadn't used yet? Something still lurking in the dark? I don't know. But I do know this. When people try to erase you, sometimes the loudest way to fight back is to stand your ground until they're forced to look you in the eye. Now I'll ask you, if you found proof that your own family was trying to cut you out of your life's work, would you fight like I did, or would you walk away before the war even started? That's the end of today's story. Did things turn out the way you thought, or were there some surprises along the way? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to hit the like button. And if you haven't joined the community yet, now's the perfect time. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you're always the first to catch new stories. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next adventure.